Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Can a rational and reasonable human being come to the conclusion that a real person named Jesus lived and died on the cross and rose again 3 days later? That's something that we need to wrestle with, because it's either a myth that we don't need to give our time to, or the truth that will impact all of eternity. And so we want to look to see, is there any evidence, is there any historical proofs for Jesus' existence, maybe even his death? And then how can we look at that evidence and look at the best explanation for what happened, like any jury or judge does, to look at the evidence to conclude what really happened. And so we're going to look at 4 pieces of evidence, and based on those evidence, come to the best conclusion we can about what really happened to Jesus of Nazareth in Israel 2,000 years ago. So the acronym that we're going to use and the evidence we're going to look at is the crucifixion of Jesus, the appearances of the risen Jesus, the skeptics converted, and the empty tomb. What can we conclude by looking at all the evidence? And a lot of this was developed initially by Abdu Murray and Badalementi. And so as we look at these resources that they've given us, and we try to come to the best conclusion that a rational and reasoned human being can about what really happened 2,000 years ago to the person of Jesus Christ. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the crucifixion of Jesus. Was Jesus truly crucified? And to determine if he was crucified, we have to first determine that he ever existed, right? And so is there historical evidence for Jesus' existence? And the answer is yes. How do we know that anyone existed, right? It's not we can go to DNA to prove that George Washington or Abraham Lincoln existed. We go to the written historical records. We have plenty of evidence and proof for their existence. So when it comes to Jesus, is there any evidence or historical records of Jesus' existence? And the answer is yes. Just to name a few of the resources, we can look at a Roman historian named Cornelius Tacitus. And Cornelius Tacitus is a historian in Rome who's writing about events around the time of Jesus, and he includes that there was this person named Jesus of Nazareth who was put to death on the cross under the orders of Pontius Pilate. And that matches up with what we read in the Bible, right? Not just the Roman historian who, as a reminder, Rome and Christianity were at odds during this time. There was no reason for Rome to make up this person named Jesus. And so it is an enemy of Christianity showing and writing historical records that Jesus existed. The same thing happens with a Jewish historian named Josephus. He writes and documents in his historical findings around the time of Jesus that a real person named Jesus existed and was put to death under Pontius Pilate. And so when we look at historians writing around the time of Jesus, we see them writing that Rome really put to death a person named Jesus of Nazareth. And so we can have confidence in that. You can have confidence in that. I can have confidence in that. And there's enough historical evidence and proof that modern scholarship, modern historians of the historical Jesus overwhelmingly believe that a real person named Jesus lived and a real person named Jesus died. Over 90% of serious scholarship believes that Jesus died on the cross under the orders of Pontius Pilate. And I know that you might say, well, of course Christians believe that, but not just Christians. An overwhelming amount, 90%, not just of Christians, but of all historians, including agnostics and atheists, believe that Jesus died on the cross. And just to give you some quotes about that, an atheist named John Dominic Crossan says that, quote, Jesus was crucified is as historical as anything can be. Right? We see that. His crucifixion is as historical as anything can be. Look at Gerd Ludemann, another atheist. Quote, Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable. And one of the leading scholars on the historical Jesus, Bart Ehrman, who is not a Christian, he says, we know that Jesus died of crucifixion. There is no true debate in scholarship that a real person named Jesus lived, a real person named Jesus died on the cross under the orders of Pontius Pilate. And so that is a piece of evidence, and that is a historical fact. And so we have to see that there is no debate, there are no questions. It's a historical fact that Jesus lived and Jesus died. The question is, what happened after that?